Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to another episode of our Unity base building game series, codenamed Project Porcupine. And in today's episode, we are going to work on a game save dialog box, a file dialog box. Because of course we have a save button, we have a load button. Right now when we hit save and we hit load, what happens? Well, nothing much to the point of view of the user. If we look at the code over here, what happens when you hit the save world button? This is the function that gets called. We can confirm that by selecting canvas, top menu, save button. You can see on click it calls the world controller.save world is what happens over here. So this is our code for that over here. And all it does is it creates an XML serializer object and ultimately calls this serialize method over here on our world. Keep in mind we have both a world controller, which is our Unity game object, and the world object itself, which is where all the real data is. So we serialize the world, we close the writer. This writer is a string, and that's all it is to it, and we just write this string inside of player prefs. Player prefs is an internal to Unity way of storing data and information. And this works fine. I mean, really what we could do is we could do a file save dialog that really interacts with player prefs and saves to different slots. Here we create a string in player prefs called savegame00 with a value of that string. And what we could do is we could have some sort of a player pref string, you know, something like player prefs.set string, and it's like all save game names, and then you have, you know, save game 000, comma 1, etc., 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 and you keep this string updated as people make saves and whatever. You can name them and pass this, and then what you do is you look up the string with that name. So if someone, let's say you present a menu that has these three choices, someone clicks on the first one, it's this name, then you look for a string with that name, and that's when you load or whatever. But it's a little bit cumbersome, and to keep up with the idea of keeping things sort of as flexible and accessible and using normal files as much as possible, like we're doing with our assets, what we're going to do is we're going to change the save world function over here. Instead of saving the player prefs, what it's going to do, it's going to ask the user for a file name, basically. We are going to show the user a list of files in a folder, and then let you either overwrite an existing save or type in your own save game name. After all, we are, you know, hashtag PC Master Race over here. We don't offer the user only 3 save slots. We want you to be able to save as many files as you would like and then reload them as well. Same thing with load world. We're going to show them a dialog box of files and then let them pick which one they want to load. And the actual world code that does the actual reading and writing of the XML doesn't have to change at all. You know, all it cares is that it gets an XML file. It doesn't care where it comes from. So the question is, are we going to get it from, all right, the load world thing. This is when we reload the world, which is a little bit, I'm still not super keen on this. Although this is a way to keep things as clean as possible. So basically when we load, when the scene loads, it checks to see if this global static variable is set. And then it will load from a save file. So it's actually this one over here, create world from save file, that loads the world from this string. So the only thing that needs to change is that instead of the string being something that's stored in player prefs, the string is something we read from the hard drive. So let's consider the flow that we're going to want to do over here. So what should happen when we click save world, when the save button gets clicked, we should show the user a file dialog box asking for a file name to save the game to. The user can click on an existing file to overwrite it. When the save dialog box is closed with the save or OK button, do the actual save. The user can also close, cancel the dialog box, in which case we do nothing. So we need 2 steps here. Save world doesn't actually save the world. This is the save world dialog box. So we sort of need 2 steps. How do we want to do it? Do we want to rename these functions? Because we're not really saving the world with this function anymore. Instead, we're showing the save dialog box, which I guess I will go ahead and do that. Tell you what, let's go and make a new public function that says show save dialog, like that. And that's actually the function we want to call when we hit the save button. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop this from running. The save button over here. So we're going to change it to call world controller show save dialog. That's what it's going to do instead. So this is actually this part. And this function here, this function gets called when the user confirms a file name from the save dialog box. So there you go. Other than that, we're going to keep this function the same way it is now. So we've got to make a dialog box for the files. That's fine. Okay, let's do some of that. Now, when you are doing any UI work in Unity, there are 2 places where you can sort of store things like dialog boxes. They can either be in your scene, but disabled, so you can't see them, or they could be prefabs that get instantiated when you need the dialog box. Regardless of which way you do it, you sort of have to like create the object within the scene. For simplicity, I'll probably have it in here for now. We're going to create a new empty inside of our canvas over here. I'm going to call this something like dialog boxes to keep things nicely organized. And then inside of that, and just for the sake of argument, I'm going to make this stretch to the full size of the window. I don't think it's actually going to matter for this. No, it'll make life a lot simpler for the next one. So then we're going to create a new UI object inside of this, which a dialog box is what? Well, a dialog box is just any UI element, really, is what it is. In a sense, you can think of it as like a background, which is sort of visually speaking is your actual window itself. And then inside of that, it's got some extra elements. So we could go with a panel. Panel will be semi-transparent and by default occupies the entire parent, which isn't really what we want. But really a panel is the same as image. We've talked about that before, just slightly different defaults. It doesn't really matter what we pick. Ultimately, we have a game object here, which we're going to call save file. This is our save file dialog box. And all it has is an image on it. And we want to give it a sprite, which we're going to use for, we'll use the background sprite over here for now. It just gives us little rounded corners, which is nice. And we can give it any sort of size that we might want. I mean, we could have it anchored. I think I'm going to be quite happy with just leaving it to the center. I don't think we want our save dialog box to sort of scale with the screen or anything like that. We're going to want it to be more or less probably a fixed size. Now, what's going to go on inside of that? Well, inside of that, I guess we're probably going to want, say, some text, which we're going to anchor to the top, and we're going to want to have centered, which is going to say something like save file, ... or I don't know, something of that nature. We're going to mess around with fonts and things like that in the future. And then we're going to want the list of save files, right? We're going to want it to show the list of the files that are already there, because one of the things you can do is choose one. I mean, I guess what we're going to do is we'll have a input field, and we'll probably park that at the bottom of the screen. So I'm just holding Alt and Shift, and I'm going to go ahead and let's see, how do I want to do this? I guess I'm going to have it stretch for the entirety of the bottom. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of padding on the left and vertically. But then on the right, I'm going to give it like, I don't know, well, more than that, 150 pixels of padding. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm trying to leave enough room in here to put a couple of buttons. So I'm going to want a button that says, I guess, OK. Then we'll call it button dash OK. And I'm going to duplicate that and have this one be the button, whoops, cancel. And the text for it will be cancel, like that. And then I want the cancel button to be in the bottom right corner. And actually, let's see, I'm going to want 4 pixels of padding and 4 pixels of vertical padding as well. That should be -4, I guess, like that. And the width, we are going to probably something like this. Let's call that 70 even, because then with the OK button, I want it to be exactly the same width. And I also want it to be anchored to the bottom right and to have 4 pixels of height. Oops, 4 pixels. And for the X position, I'm just going to manually move it over to something like this. So now we should have a dialog box here where if I start resizing it, there we go. I like the bottom that way. Just in case we do decide to resize it. Again, it's most likely not going to be dynamically scaled or anything like that, but we have that option. In fact, I'm going to move you to the center of the screen once more, and I think I'm pretty happy about that. So we got that. So the idea is you have to enter in the file name. So we've got that placeholder text over here, which file name will be that. So you type some amount in, and then you hit OK, and it locks that in. We might relabel this. We might do all kinds of different things with these buttons, but for now, that's pretty much what we're looking for. Let's start with this part over here before we get the list of files. So we can put in a little placeholder, I suppose. Ultimately, what we're going to have is we're going to have another sort of image here that is going to be some sort of, I don't know, I mean, they're all pretty much the same graphic here. Something like that. And this is going to be the file list background. And it's going to, we're going to tell it it's stretched to be the full thing, but that's not actually accurate, because what we're going to do is we're going to scale this down, something like that, scale it up something like this, and then tell it that it wants want the padding over that way. So this is where the list of files is going to be show up. So this title here, we want it to be centered vertically, something like that. So this is going to be empty for now. We're not going to concern ourselves with the file list yet. We'll probably actually wait on that. We're going to get the file saving working first. Then we'll make the loading dialog box, which obviously needs to be able to use this list, and then we'll make sure to incorporate that into the saving dialog as well. So the idea is here, you have to type in something in the file name, and then when you push OK, this is going to set a message to our world controller. There we go. We're going to tell our world controller that now it should save the world. And we're actually going to make a little change over here. To save world, we're going to have it require a string, which is the file name that we are saving the world to. And now if we go and I'm going to have to just pick something else and then pick save world again. There we go. It's going to require a string over here. Maybe if I just let it recompile, that word worked okay. Actually, I guess we can't just automatically read that, or can we? No, I don't think we can. All right, that can just be that. That's fine. Never mind. There might be a way to automatically read it from the text field, but I don't think. I think we'll have to do it in code. So again, that's just going to recompile over here. Yeah, and then it doesn't have a function with that parameter. So save world. Okay, so when we hit the save button here at the top of the screen, it's actually just going to open this dialog box. Then we're going to type in a file name, and then we're going to hit OK, at which point it's going to call the world controller .save world. So the input field over here, we're going to call this to be the, we're just going to call this file name. There we are. That's going to be the name of this. Actually, technically it goes into this text. No, because the input field script. Yeah, okay. I think I'm going to be happy with that. All right, because it automatically updates the placeholder and the text with this script over here. So that is, I think I'm pretty happy with that. So what's going to happen? When we show save dialog box, we actually don't have to do anything over here. Well, that's not true. We're going to have to do a lot more later on. But for now, we just need to show it. So we need some sort of link to this dialog box. Now, here's the thing. Normally, we're going to want this to be disabled so that it can't be seen, right? Because it is disabled, you won't be able to use GameObject.find save file or anything like that. It's not going to be possible because by default, you're not able to find disabled stuff. So in fact, what we're going to need is we're going to need a link to this. And later on, we're probably going to want a better like window controller kind of thing, which we don't have right now, right? We don't have anything called window controller. No, almost certainly we're going to want something like that, in particular to manage our modals, but we'll worry about that later. So we're going to have this public game object. This is going to be our save file dialog box. Box like this. So if we tab over and we find our controllers, so world controller over here should have a slot for it. So we're just going to drop, not dialog boxes. Actually, disable the wrong thing here. It's the save file over here, which would get disabled or not. So we're going to drop that in there. So now we've got a reference to it. So when we go to show save dialog, we're going to say our save file dialog box, set active true. We turn it on. And then when we hit here, this is when we have hit the save world button. So we can set active to be equal to false. And that is that. That is that process there. We could also go ahead and wire up the, I'm gonna wait for it to compile, the cancel button. And probably we won't actually call a function for it, but for now what we can just do to save some time is just have it point to the save file dialog box itself, reference the game object, set active, and keep the checkbox empty. And so then we hit cancel, it will set the dialog box to active equals false. And we can test this. So if I hit save, it opens this window. If I hit cancel, it'll disable it. Save, cancel, save, cancel. Perfect. Excellent. Now, if I did hit OK, it would call this save world function, which would also hide the dialog box, and then would also save the world. But right now, it would just save it to the player prefs, which isn't what we want. We want to save it to a file. So what is the file? Get the file name from the save file dialog box. And actually, let's do that before we set it to be inactive. So we can do that quite easily because save file dialog box has the transform. Let's see what we want to do. Get component child. Actually, that might be the easiest way to do it. Because what I was going to do is I was going to look up the file name, which we could do. I mean, we have the path and stuff like that. We know that we have a child called file name inside. Alternatively, it's also the only child that's got an input field, which I guess would be the easiest way of doing it. Get component in children. So it's the input input field, which is not there probably because we didn't include .ui. There we go. So now we should be able to reference the input field class. Now, we don't actually care about that component. What we care about is the text itself. So we can say string file name is equal to, our save file dialog box has, one of the children has a component called input field, and we're going to grab the text from that. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is we could look up the children by name. We could have a hard link, right? We could have, just like we have a reference to the dialog box itself over here, we could have a property in here so that we can point to the text field and all kinds of different things like that. But this should be fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to have it go debug.log error. I'm just going to have it spam out the file name and then return. So now the save world function does nothing anymore because it's going to return over here. In fact, if we switch over here, we're going to be told that there's unreachable code, which is true because we have a return statement over there. So some code will be unreachable, but that's fine. So let's hit play. Let's hit save. Let's type in something. Test. Let's hit OK. And we get our test over here. Excellent. And the window closes and everything. That's brilliant. Very happy about that. Okay, so we have a file name. So now what are we going to do? Well, what we're going to do next is we are going to, so we get the file name. We close the dialog box. We set up our serializer and our writer. We serialize the world. We close the writer. And then instead of putting the string inside a player press, instead what we're going to do, create/overwrite the save file with the XML text, which is really, really easy to do. I thought there was something else I want to address first, and I can't remember what it is. No, I guess we're okay. I don't know. Sure. I thought there was something else, but I guess not. So writing a file, there's a couple of different ways we can do it, obviously, just like everything else. Probably we'll just use write all text, which is probably the single laziest way of doing it, which seems okay. We could check to see if a file exists already and confirm overwriting, but I don't think that's our job. I think that might be the save world job, the save world dialog box. So if you hit OK, that's the thing. Right now, when we hit OK, it just runs save world. But what we probably want to do is have some other check over here, right? Public void so what do we have? Save dialog OK was clicked, or something like that. This is a really cumbersome name. But what we do here is we do something like check to see if the file already exists. If so, ask for overwrite confirmation. So it'll actually be in that overwrite confirmation box, where if you hit yes, it'll go save world, or if it doesn't, it goes here. Checking to see if a file exists is really easy. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out the path here. Where we're going to save it to. So this is like a to-do, right? To-do. Do this. So we'll have that call that. And we're just going to change how things are wired here. Our OK button, even though this doesn't have make any real difference now, our OK button is going to say, it's going to call the save dialog OK was clicked. So it's going to do some sort of checking over here, and then may or may not call save world. Once we get to save world, we assume it's perfectly fine for us to just write directly to this file very, very, very blindly, and that's okay. But we need some sort of path, right? And I guess, actually, we're going to check the path over here. So tell you what, let's change save world, after all, to require a file name, which we're going to get from over here, and then like that. There we go. That's going to be fine. So it's going to have some sort of file name and go to there. So the way you would check to see if it existed over here would be something like if file.exists, and then, so you've got the file name, but that's not the full path, is it? No, it's not. So if the file exists is equal to true, then do file overwrite dialog box, and we'd actually return right away. Otherwise, we do the rest of this over here. So you can do that sort of thing. But again, we're checking to see if a file exists with a file name. But this right now, the file name is just something like, you know, my save 123, right, or test test. So again, if I hit play, hit save. So this is my file 123. And then I hit OK. So right now, file name is just what was in the dialog box. So that's not enough. Right now, file name is just what was in the dialog box. We need to pad this out to the full path plus an extension. That's really easy to do. So we've done that sort of thing before. Where were we doing that before? Oh, in our sprite loading, for example, right? So if we load that up, for an example, sprite manager over here, right? So we're doing the path combine like that over here. So we're going to be doing something very similarly to that. So hell, let's copy this right now. So the full file path is going to be some base path, potentially with a folder, but really what we're doing is something like this. So we've got some sort of path. In the end, we're looking for something that's going to be similar to this, depending on OS. So something that's going to be similar to C/users/ your username, 18, /application data / my company name / my game name / saves / save game name 123 dot, I don't know, SAV. Something of this nature. Now, depending on what platform you're on, the actual path will be different. It'll get stored to a different library. But this sort of idea is the idea that you have a standardized storage location for all your application data, and all well-formed apps will interact with that same sort of root folder and that same sort of root folder structure. Luckily, we can get that info. So just like we can get the application streaming path, we can also get application.data path. That's not what we're looking for. Data path is the folder, the path to the game data folder. So wherever the program is installed / game data. But what we're looking for is the persistent data path. This is the folder where you are allowed to store data for this application that will stick around. This is your personal folder. And what this here maps to, this is equal to this, that over here. So, or rather, I should say something like username, whoa, interesting autocomplete, username, like that. Okay? So, this can change depending on how the user has their stuff configured, and again, depending on operating system and whatnot. But every place that Unity runs, including mobile devices, should give you some sort of path that you can write to at this point. On mobile devices, it'll probably be on like on the flash card or something of that nature. So this is this. And where does the my company name and my game name come from? Well, I'm glad you asked. If we go to Edit, Project Settings, so Edit, Project Settings, Player, there's two fields over here for company name and product name. So if I call this company name Quillatine Productions, product name is Project Porcupine, well, those are the things that get inputted here. My company name, my game name, and obviously username is the username of the user currently logged into Windows. So every user has their own unique place, and that's the right place to save things. I mean, we could just dump files directly into there, but you might, you might want other files in there. You might want some specific like options set up or logging information. You might want to write some log files in there or all kinds of different things. So it's probably better to make a subfolder for saves. And the extension literally doesn't matter. We are, of course, going to be writing XML files. So we could go with .xml, but I think we'll just go with .sav for a save file, and that's going to be perfectly fine. So that's what persistent data is. So we want to combine this path. So we want to start with the root path. We want to add on the saves folder on top of that. And then we're going to go and create another one over here, which is the existing file path plus the file name plus .sav. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing we need to verify is in the save dialog, OK was clicked, is the file name valid? i.e. we may want to ban path delimiters. So / / or colon, I think, on old Mac things, which I guess is not relevant anymore. But something like that. And maybe periods. I mean, I know if people put periods like dots, that's okay, as long as it's not at the start, right? Because you don't want necessarily someone to go like for their save file name is go, some important file. Keep in mind, it's not like people can use like this dialog box to like hack anything or whatever. It's their own computer, so the worst they could do is overwrite one of their own files in some weird way, which obviously doesn't particularly matter. But we may want to do some sort of validation there. So we'll do that. For now, what'll probably happen if they put in some sort of really wonky name, we'll probably, some exception will get fired when we actually try to save the file, which means the program will just crash, and it's like, that's the punishment for putting in the wrong thing. But we'll probably want to put in some sort of validation here and let the user know, hey, no, this is no good. Hell, we might want to do that in real time. As someone is typing, we may want explicitly not let them type slashes and so on and so forth, which is a really common way to do things. So that's something we can consider later on. But anyway, at this point, we should have something, right? File path should contain something that looks very much like this. So at this point, file path should look very much like something like this. So what we actually want to check for the file exists is this. And then we want to actually save the world to that file name. So, save world, same XML serialization, and then we want to write to that file, which we can just do probably with the easiest would be something like write all text. It's a very simple function. You give it a file path. So actually, I'm going to rename file name to file path over here. So we get a file path, and then we give it some text, which in this case would be the writer to string. We just want the XML, the text version of the XML. And then we're done? Let's see if this works. I'm trying to think like through my head that I missed a step. It's entirely possible, of course. But we're going to find out in a moment here. So if I hit play, and the load is still the old load. So it's going to load for my player perhaps, or not. What did I do? Create world from save. Did I write a bad XML file at some point? That's possible. Okay, let's not worry about it. We'll check it out next. It's fine. You break something, you fix something. So I'll just do the pathfinding test to get a little bit of a map. We'll hit save. We'll get this. My save 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna hit OK. Directory not found. Oh, does this directory have to exist already? So this is where my stuff should get saved. So if I go, let me open this view up. So yeah, of course this would not actually exist. Sorry, I'm just doing something on the other monitor. I'll get it swung over on you guys in just a second here. So if I look for Quill18 Productions, Project Porcupine. Oh, okay. So it did actually create the base folder. I guess when the program runs, Unity must automatically create this folder for you when you run the program, which is kind of handy. But you'll see there's no saves folder, which is specifically what it's complaining about. So that's actually something I hadn't thought of. C# create folder. I was like, what? There's a helper function. Is directory dot something. Directory dot create directory. Excellent. So what we want to do is check to see if a directory exists as well. Okay. So save world over here. Okay. First, make sure the save folder exists. So if I go to directory.exists, excellent. So we're going to say, first of all, let me make a helper function here. String file save path, which is going to return this. File save, like base path. Right, which is going to be a persistent data path plus saves. That way we can make changes later on. So here, we can actually simplify our life a little bit by saying file save base path plus the file name. This should not be in red. I think everything should be okay, shouldn't it? Stop running. Clear. Where am I saying a semicolon? Oh, over here, down here. That's fine. So we can say if directory exists, file save base path is equal to false. Obviously, again, you can do the exclamation mark, but this will save us. So if the folder doesn't exist, we have to create it. So we can say directory dot create directory and the file save base path. Like that. Make sure it exists. Now, this can throw an exception. Note, this can throw an exception if we can't create the folder. But why would this ever happen? We should, by definition, have the ability to write to our persistent data folder unless something is really broken with the computer/device we're running on. But I suppose it could happen. So this should create our saves folder, at which point we should be allowed to write the text to that file. So let's try that again. So we'll hit play, pathfinding test, hit save, my file 123, hit OK, no error. Am I still throwing out the debug information over there? Oh yeah, right over here. Yeah, still spitting that out, and we've got that. Now let's check my folder. There we go. Saves folder. Bam. There it is. Saves folder exists, and this file was created. And again, if I open this up, this is just our XML file. It's got the .sav thing, but this is just our save dialog. So now, instead of saving it in the Unity user prefs, we're actually saving it to an actual just file on the hard drive, which is great. So in the next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to make our file load dialog, which is going to do some of the similar things here, but is also going to read our file save base path. It's going to read that, look at all the files in there, ideally sort them probably by age. Maybe we might want to give the user the option of sorting alphabetically or by date. I mean, I always want, whenever I have a file load dialog box, I always want it sorted by date where the newest files are at the top. I don't think I've ever wanted to search for something alphabetically. And in fact, most games, I'm trying to think, most games don't offer you a way to look at things alphabetically. So it's probably fine if we just sort it by date and showing the newest ones at the top to make it easy to click on. And that's probably okay. And yeah, and then we change our load world thing. And then what we'll do is we'll go back, once the file load thing is, we'll update the save to actually show us a list of existing saves, both as a hint to like, well, you might not want to overwrite something accidentally, or maybe you do want to overwrite something, because usually I just want to save over the latest save, right? And so I just click on it and hit OK, or maybe clicking on it makes it okay. Probably click on it, have it fill this box, and then hit OK is probably the best, because sometimes you want to click on an existing save and then, you know, put -2 or B or something like that, So I said something like that twice. Great. Excellent. Clearly time to end this video. Thanks for watching, folks. See you next time. Hey, thank you to all the June patrons who support these videos through July and early August, and especially these Mike Check supporters. We've got Steven Stagger again, and Michael McClintock again, and Kale the Quick again. Lots of agains. Drazion, Adjective, Jason Yanity, Wes Ovenbeving, Craig Mortel, Neil Blakey Milner, Speedy Savant, Valiant Cake Fiend, Aaron Toyson, Marius Fieldvold, Jan Torre Vel, Ole Peter Talgo, Julien Auger Lafont, Petrie Michaela, and absolutely everyone who has watched, shared, favorited, and subscribed. Thanks for continuing to make this a reality, and I'll see you next time.